Psych-Minded Media presents Best Psychology in Film with your host, Dr. Catherine Marshall Woods. Best Psychology in Film is also a book available online where books are sold. Today's featured guest, Aisha Densmore-Bey. Welcome to Best Psychology in Film, where we converse with award-winning filmmakers and think together about the psychology within the work. In order for a couple to have intimacy, individuals must be brave enough to be vulnerable. With us today is Aisha Densmore-Bey, filmmaker, architect, and designer, as well as writer, director, and producer of Room, a short that intensely highlights these dynamics between the characters. Welcome, Aisha Densmore-Bey. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I was so excited to have you on to talk about Room because I hear that it's actually going to be featured pretty soon at an international film festival.
Yes, I'm really excited. It is going to be shown on October 3rd during the Roxbury International Film Festival. And it's a film festival that has been basically a staple here in Boston for 22, 23 years. And they feature, films from people of color from all over the world. And so it's a festival that's really meant a lot to me, especially since when I moved to Boston back in 2005. That was like the one thing that I had to do every year is kind of go to the opening night of the festival. So to be included is such an honor, and it's something that I'm still elated about.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about Room.
So Room, like you said, is my film short, is my first narrative film short. I did another film short back in 2011, but that was more of a documentary about architecture. So I still incorporated architecture in the work with this film, in that Room is about a couple who goes on a romantic weekend to a boutique hotel. And so there's Mitchell, who is an artist, an up-and-coming artist. And he takes his architect girlfriend, Zaina, to this hotel for her birthday weekend. And, during the weekend, they kind of go through every emotion that a couple can go through. Zaina's architecture firm that she works with just signed on to take on a commission to design a prison. And Mitchell has a family member who is incarcerated. And so obviously there's tension there, but then there's also other things that kind of happen in the relationship that play out during the weekend.
And so one of the things we talk about is the act of being vulnerable in order to get close or to be intimate within relationships. How does that play out in your film?
So the tagline for the film is love, intimacy, and ethics. And I think those are the three major themes that happen in the movie. The couple is very much in love, very close, but when they go through all of these emotions, well, part of that is, going through all of these emotions is being able to even be vulnerable enough to, to have these difficult conversations. To be able to cry, to be able to, just say what your fears are and those kind of things. And so they go through, all of that through the weekend. And so the intimacy played a huge part of it. It was very important to me to show intimacy and vulnerability, especially with an African-American couple, really be able to show, I won't even say down in the dirt, but just very, very raw, basic vulnerability and intimacy, and how it all brings back and comes back to love. And then also the ethical part about it, with Zaina, designing a prison and the conflict that goes with that.
Sure. It's so, interesting when we think about being vulnerable. Many of us tend to think that that equals weakness in some way.
Right. We're basically socialized to feel, that weakness is a problem. And it really is strength. It's really being comfortable in yourself and comfortable with yourself and with the other person that you're being vulnerable with.
Right. And it's interesting because as I watched Room, one of the things that I adored about this film was the fact that both individuals placed themselves in a position to be vulnerable, not just the female or not just the male, that they both decided to have that intimacy with each other and trust one another, which is pretty required to be that vulnerable with each other.
And I think part of why I wanted to do it, as far as place it in the setting of this hotel, partially is because it's just, again, I'm an architect and it's a beautiful, it's a beautiful hotel. And it also has a personal, personal tie for me as I stayed there about, actually, about a year and a couple of months before I actually shot Room. But just the intimacy that is required. I mean, you can have intimate conversations anywhere. You can have an intimate conversation in a car and anything. But I think the combination of it being her birthday weekend and then they're in this confined space. I started the initial kind of thought process for the film before it even became about a couple was really an architect goes to hotel for the weekend and they come out changed in some kind of way, and so really I think that the contemplative nature of just being in another space, being in a hotel room, and kind of what happens in hotel rooms and all of that, it just kind of lent itself to this kind of dynamic where you're in this space, and we all know that sometimes when people are outside of their comfort zone, that either behavior changes or they may become on edge or something about their personality may change, whether it's traveling, whether just whatever way they're outside of their comfort zone. Sometimes there's a change in the dynamic. So I really wanted to kind of explore that.
Mhm. It's kind of what we talk about being a pressure cooker. When we think about individuals being confined and in a situation where, let's say, it's hard to be able to leave a small space, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes much more pressure to be able to have a conversation or conversations that are more difficult. And it forces individuals to react or respond either in a very, again, close way and bond, and or to really defend against that. And your characters did such a nice job doing both, where they
Mm-hmm.
were defensive at times, and they were also growing closer together at the same time.
Right. And so, yeah, I think it's hard for me to even to follow that because that was such an excellent kind of uh, a summation of what happens in the movie. And so, I just think that showing those more human dynamics kind of were really important to me just as a person. Really being able, I really respond to people who are vulnerable, who are authentic. I mean, everyone's talking about authenticity these days, but when you're able to kind of like peel back those layers and really be authentic and true, is that's when you get to the meat of it, and when growth happens, when both for yourself and for your relationship. So for me, it's really important to kind of highlight these dynamics within film.
Hear more of this interview at Best Psychology in Film on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, and where podcasts are hosted. Want to make your film psychologically rich? Visit our website at www.psychmindedmedia.com to collaborate. And find more on Instagram at psychmindedmedia. Created with works by